Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. And today I thought I would give my opinions on a boss reprint and is it good for the game, and just kind of talk about the idea of why boss's order is, kind of a hot topic right now of conversation, and why a lot of people do not want boss to come back, and why we would have been better off without a boss reprint. We're going to be talking about all that in today's video. So yeah, boss did get confirmed. Yeah, it's going to be getting reprinted. We're going to be stuck with boss's order for another 3 years. It was looking like we were not going to see a boss reprint for a bit there. I mean, we were even seeing supporter cards get revealed that were like weaker versions of boss. So surely it was like, oh, we're definitely not going to get a boss reprint. Well, no, it got an updated regulation mark. We're going to be getting it back. I think it also got a regulation mark update alongside Rare Candy and Ultra Ball. I'm okay with Rare Candy coming back. I feel like a card that should always be in the game. And then obviously Ultra Ball, it's a pretty powerful card. Obviously, it's probably the best Pokemon search card of all time. But I don't really have a problem with Ultra Ball coming back. Like, Ultra Ball is like a fine reprint. There's nothing really wrong with bringing that back. But the big thing is, yeah, Boss getting reprinted. I don't think Pokemon updated the Professor's Research yet, so it doesn't look like we're going to be getting Research back, which is a pretty big deal. So I know a lot of people were quite upset about potentially seeing Research again, but Research is one of those other like really powerful supporter cards, much like Boss, where it feels like it doesn't gatekeep all their supporters, but it does feel like it does that, because like the best supporter is just flat out Research. There's no reason to play any other supporter a lot of the time other than like Research and Iono. It's been that way for a while with like Professor Juniper and N. But Boss is a bigger deal because, yeah, it was looking like we weren't going to get a format without Boss. One of the things with Boss's order is just how strong the card is. The supporter card that lets you gust anything out is just really, really good. And a lot of decks right now, their win condition is usually just spamming Boss's order. For example, Goldengo plays 4 Boss right now because the point of that deck is just aggressive Boss's order KOs. And a lot of the time, Boss can really punish you for having a slow setup, and also rewards your opponent for having it in their hand. It doesn't really punish the person who plays it. It's just like flat out says, oh, look, I have this supporter card that lets me gusling out. It does feel like Boss has been a part of the game for a very long time now. I mean, it has been around for quite some time. I mean, we had Boss's order originally back in, 2013 as a supporter card when Flashfire came out with Lysander. That was the first time we got Boss. We were in a meta where Pokemon Catcher was the thing, which was even more broken. But yeah, we eventually got Lysander, which was like a nerfed version of Pokemon Catcher. But now we're at a point where people don't like the effective Boss slash Lysander. And that's the thing. Boss is a very strong card. And I definitely can see a reason why it shouldn't come back. Because it's kind of boring when games get decided by Boss's order. Like, when you get Iono to a very small hand, you happen to drop Boss's order for game, feels kind of bad. Or you just have Boss in the early game and you just have the ability to take out one of your opponent's important setup Pokemon, or you use Boss to take a really big prize lead out of nowhere. It's kind of boring. There are a lot of Gust cards in the format that really don't get to shine, or really kind of feel like there's too many Gusts in the format. For example, Counter Catcher is probably actually, it might be the best item in the format right now besides the Pokemon search cards, because Counter Catcher allows you to basically play from behind, and having Boss's order on an item card when you're behind is really good. I could even make an argument that Counter Catcher is a little too good, and maybe they shouldn't have brought Counter Catcher back, especially with how much it gets abused right now. Almost every single deck right now plays a Counter Catcher because it's just that good. Why would you not play Boss's order on an item card when you're behind in prizes? So this card is really good. Boss is really good. We have 2 of the best gusting cards in the game. You could even make that 3 of the best gusting cards if you also want to include the A-Spec Prime Catcher, which is quite literally the best version of Boss on an item card, Guzma. So it feels like right now, in our current format, we have the very best gusting cards you could play. We have Guzma on an item card, we have a Counter Catcher, and we just flat out already have Boss in the format. So it just feels like the way the game is right now, you can play a deck and have any of these really strong gusting cards in your deck. And it feels a little too broken. So then the idea was, okay, well, with rotation, we're losing Boss, and then we're also losing Counter Catcher. So all we would really have is stuff like Pokemon Catcher. We would have Team Rocket's Giovanni for the Team Rocket engine decks, which would make them a lot more appealing to play. And then also, Lisi's Appeal was another one that got printed. And then we'd also have Pokemon Catcher, right, which is the coin flip boss, which is, slightly more balanced. Not every deck would play this, but, if decks were desperate for Gust, if they didn't want to play Prime Catcher, then Pokemon Catcher would be the perfect item card to play. Maybe this card would see play in almost every single deck because it was one of the best gusting cards. Well, here's the thing. We're getting Boss back, so all that kind of gets thrown aside. So one argument that I've seen about how to balance boss's order, because that's the thing, how would you balance a boss's order like card? If you brought this card back, people don't like it. People think games can be decided by boss is pretty lame and boring. How would you balance boss? How would you make boss's order a card that's fair? Well, I was watching Tord live stream the other day, and he was talking about his opinions on the reprint. He does not like Boss getting reprinted. He thinks it's too strong. He even put like a meme on Twitter where he showed how he lost in the finals of so many tournaments because of Boss's order. But yeah, Boss, he said the way to balance it would be to make Boss counter catcher. So counter catcher as a supporter card would be a more fair and balanced version of Boss's order, because then, one, you can't just randomly play it whenever you want, like Boss, and you also have to play at a specific moment in the game. So you have to be behind in the prize trade, like with counter catcher. So you basically have to kind of, I guess, play a little bit slower to really get access to boss. Because here's the thing, like I said, I think counter catcher is a very powerful card. I think it's maybe a little too strong right now. It's definitely one of the more, game-changing items in the format right now. Like, any deck, theoretically, with a counter catcher can win the game because counter catcher Iono is such a deadly combo. But even before we had Iono, like counter catcher, oh, I guess counter catcher's always been around with Iono, but you get my point. Like, counter catcher is easily abusable right now. Like, Dragapult is a great culprit of why counter catcher is broken. We even saw, Block Snorlax become such a big menace of the last format because of counter catcher. Like, this card is a little too good, in my opinion. But so is Boss. So the idea is, well, what if we just turn Boss into counter catcher? So now counter catcher was a supporter card. I think that would be a way more fair and balanced approach to Boss's order. I will say this, with Boss being in the format, we don't have cards like Luminion V or Tapu Lele GX in the format, which I do think help balance Boss a little bit. I think Boss is a little too strong when we are in a format where finding it for free is so easy. Like, when you can turn your Ultra Balls and whatnot into Boss's order, that's where things become even more broken. So I'll say this, even though we do have Boss, as long as we don't see a reprint of Luminion V or Tapu Lele's ability, Boss being around, it will be, people don't like it, but it could be a lot worse, because being able to also then find it with Ultra Ball is even more scarier. I mean, there is a little bit of randomness right now to having Boss in your deck. That's why so many decks play high counts of Boss. Like, even Dragapult, we saw Tord play 4 Boss's order in his Dragapult list. Boss is also, in my opinion, right now in our current format, one of the most important cards to play, apart from just being like that random annoying card that wins you games when you just have it. It's also a pretty instrumental card right now in the Monkey Dory War. From what I've been finding, any deck that is in the Monkey Dory War actually really wants to play Boss's order. Because, like, when you're in a Monkey Dory War, you don't want to attack into your opponent's active and put all this damage on the board. Like with Dragapult and Grimmsnarl, you don't want to be doing that because you don't want to give your opponent free Adrenabrain damage. So, naturally, decks like Dragapult playing 4 Boss's order makes sense, because being able to spam Boss against opposing Monkey Dories is actually really good. So even though Boss's order is a strong card right now, it actually does serve a purpose in the format, which is one thing I will say about them bringing back Boss. The one thing that makes me a little happy about Boss coming back is that it is instrumental in the Monkey Dory War, which I think is really, really good. It also is a good card to have in the early game to punish your opponent for going, like, early Budew against you, which I think is also, like, kind of decent, because Budew is kind of one of those cards where it's like, is it good or bad for the game? Alongside, Dragapult and Dusknoir. Like, is Budew a card that should be in the format? Boss Order gets to somewhat punish Budew, because you can boss something out, go around the Budew, and then leave them with a Budew on the board, which you can then, like, KO later on with, like, Monkey Dory or something. So Boss does have good purposes in the format right now. It's a good card to have in the Monkey Dory War, and it can be a decent card to have in the early game versus decks that try to slow you down by using stuff like Budew against you. But then again, games being decided by Boss is pretty boring. There's a lot of gusting in the format. Like I said, this Leese's Appeal, they revealed this with Surging Sparks, and this was kind of like the first sign where it's like, oh, we are really not getting a Boss reprint, are we? Because Leese's Appeal is clearly Pokemon trying to nerf Boss's order so that when it rotates, this would be one of the strongest gusting cards. It gets to switch in a basic Pokemon on the bench, but you also get to confuse it. So you don't get to bring in evolution, so this card would not work against Dragapult and Gardevoir or Grimmsnarl, but it does work against Pheasantipity, basic stuff like Dreepies and Ralts and Budews and stuff, and Monkey Dory, but it's not going to be working against evolutions. This is a more fair and balanced approach to Boss's order. Well, that's just not going to be a thing now because, well, Boss is coming back, so this card will probably see 0 play. This would have been an interesting card to have in the format if there was no Boss. If one of the best gusting cards in the game on a supporter was Leese's Appeal, I don't think anyone would complain, because then the game would kind of shift a little bit where all of a sudden you would now get punished for playing more big basics in your deck. So decks that rely on stuff like Latias EX, Squawkabilly, Pheasantipity, stuff like that, they would get punished for having them in play because of Leese's Appeal being live, which is actually really cool. It would have actually made the format a little bit better, in my opinion, because now these big basic Ooga Booga decks would be a little bit more riskier to play if every deck was playing Licia, because this would be the new boss's order. But no, boss is just going to come back, so this Licia's appeal gets thrown out the window. I think one of the downsides, though, about having no boss in the format would be how good Prime Catcher would be. Like, if Licia's appeal, Pokemon Catcher were the two best Gust cards in the format with no boss, all of a sudden it would potentially create a bit of a shift where now everybody would probably be playing Prime Catcher because it's the only gusting card in the format. So, or the only real like good gusting card in the format. So I do think maybe one reason why they maybe brought Boss back was probably because of Prime Catcher. Because yeah, Prime Catcher, well, it's a good card right now. Not that many decks use Prime Catcher. Like a few decks, like Joltik Box plays it. Pulsar sometimes plays it. But like not every deck is using Prime Catcher because there's better options or there's just more of a wide variety. Well, now if Boss didn't come back, all of a sudden everybody would probably have to play Prime Catcher in their deck. So I will say this, at least bringing back Boss does make it so that not every deck would probably be forced to play Prime Catcher. Because it feels like your deck would have a bigger advantage over your opponent because you would have the best Gust card in the game because there's no Boss. So if your opponent's playing like Unfair Stamp or, Energy Search Pro or Neo Warp Energy or Secret Box, it's like, yeah, those are really good cards, but like you don't have the best Gust in the game. You don't have Boss in your deck. I have Prime Catcher. I have an advantage. So that might be why they brought Boss back, in all honesty, is literally because of a card like Prime Catcher. But yeah, we will be losing Counter Catcher. But yeah, we will get Boss back. The other thing I want to note too, the formats where we didn't have Boss are actually pretty cool. We've had formats before where Custom Catcher here was the only form of good Gust in the format. This is basically Boss's order on an item card, but you have to play two of them from your hand at once. So you have to have both Custom Catchers in your hand in order to use it. We were in a meta, I think it was Worlds 2019, if I'm not mistaken, where Guzma did rotate, and Custom Catcher was the best Gust card in the game, so every deck was playing for Custom Catcher because this was, like, arguably the best way to play, like, the Gust effect at the time. So that was a really interesting format. I thought that was a decent little format there. Also, stuff like Cross Switcher, which is, like, Guzma for Custom Catcher. That was a thing. I can't remember. I don't think no, maybe we were in a format where Cross Switcher was the only gusting card. I can't remember on that one. I'm a little blurry because I know Boss did come back in, was it Brilliant Stars, I think it was? Or I could be wrong on that. But I don't know if we were in a format where Cross Switcher was the only gusting card. But we definitely were in a format where Custom Catcher was the only gust. Other thing I want to note, like Team Rocket's Giovanni, like one of the cool things about not bringing back Boss's Order would be that all of a sudden the Team Rocket engine deck would have a lot more appeal to it because it would be one of the only decks that had literally the Boss's Order supporter effect with Giovanni, or I should say the Guzma supporter effect. This would be, Prime Catcher for Team Rocket Pokemon. So this would be one of the better reasons to then play a Team Rocket deck in the future. The Team Rocket deck has so much potential, just never gets to shine right now, mainly because of like power creep and like the fact that it probably doesn't really do well against Gardevoir, Grim, and Dragapult in the format where everyone's throwing Monkey Dories back and forth each other. Like those decks just can't really work. Well, Team Rocket's Giovanni would be a good reason to play the Team Rocket deck in the future formats because, well, you get access to essentially Boss's Order. Like, why would you not play the deck? It's a good reason to play it. Well, now that advantage is thrown out the window. So it's definitely sad to see Boss come back, for sure. My opinion is I don't really, like, I'm 50-50 on it. Like, I can see why they brought it back because, like I said, it would maybe create a bit of an imbalance with Prime Catcher and stuff. But at the same time, I can see why people are getting sick of it because it has been around for so long now. Like, for the past, 5-6 years, it literally has been a Boss's Order world where every deck's been playing Boss. Like, ever since it came back in Sword and Shield base set, everybody's just been playing like 3 to 4 Boss in their deck. It's been the most crutch card in the game right now where it feels like games are decided. I mean, literally, World Championship finals have been decided by Boss for game. IC finals have been decided by Boss for game. This card definitely is a boring card to have in the format. It's interesting for sure. Again, I am 50-50 on the card. I personally would like to see a format with no Boss's Order. I think that'd be pretty cool. But at the same time, I can see why they would have brought it back. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think of Boss Order? Do you think it's time for Pokemon to get rid of Boss for good and let it go for a while, and then have us in a format with no boss to shake things up a little bit, make things more interesting? Do you think Pokemon should, if they don't bring boss back, should they bring it back in a way where it's balanced? Like I said, maybe turn boss into counter catcher as a supporter card, which would be a little bit more of a fair and balanced approach to those two powerful cards. Put them together would be a little bit better. What do you think of that? Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think of the boss reprint in the comment section? Again, it's a very hot topic within the community right now. It's got a lot of debate and conversation over on Twitter. I would love to hear it down below in the comments. If you're new to the channel here, make sure to subscribe down below. And yeah, I'll catch you on another video very soon here on the second channel. Bye-bye.